Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Dine D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about humans over hype. And to do that, I have a very special guest who is staying up very late on the other side of the pond for us over here. It's Christine Vallaure. Is that how you pronounce it, Christine?
Vallaure, yeah, whatever
Vallaure?
language you whatever language we're in, we just pronounce it that way.
Okay. I'm sure. I
Great.
forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name before we were chatting. We had a nice little chat before the show, as we normally do. But Christine, please introduce yourself to the people at home, who you are, what you do.
So I'm Christine. I'm primarily a designer, I'd say. That's how I started off. And I got a bit by accident, actually, into teaching, and I really love it. So I run an online learning platform called Moon Learning. And what I do there is I teach from the design side. So mainly Figma is what my big topic. And then Figma to code, so the technical side of design. And then lately, it's obviously been a lot of AI workflows. How do we connect everything? How's that all going to go together? And so I have videos that people take. I go into companies and I upskill teams, or I run live workshops. So all sorts of different paths of teaching, and a lot of time researching topics while I'm not teaching.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% align with that. A lot of research out there. There's so much information, and it makes you kind of feel some kind of way. And I'm gonna, Christine's watching me pull up my phone.
I know it's coming.
She's wanting me to pull up my phone because we talked about this before the show about, what we're going to be talking about today. And Christine, after I asked her to be on the show, sent me a paragraph that I'm going to read aloud here, and it made me feel all the feelings. And that's why when I was, kind of promoting the show, talking about this being like a little bit like design therapy. So this is what Christine wrote me. She says, I want to talk about design to code with AI and why it's a mess. Real design control in Figma, not vibing. The promise can't hold up because these tools were built for human handoff, not dev pipelines. Meanwhile, design systems are trickling down from enterprise to small teams through AI, mostly taped over with hype instead of naming the gaps. And what it's like to work across all of it. Always a tourist in design, UX, CSS systems. Pretty amazingly exciting and very exhausting. Yes.
Where are we starting even? You pick a sentence.
Yes. Yes, queen. Let's do the snaps. Yes, queen. So, yeah, I felt a lot about the stuff that you were talking about. Because I know that you work in design systems as well. So you definitely feel the same, I think, feelings that I've felt as well. Or I guess we share the same feelings. That's why I'm responding to this so deeply. Where there's just a lot of vibing happening. And it's almost like we threw out the 20, 25 plus years of experience that we've been trying to gain in favor of just pushing it all out. Right, and the human part of this stuff and the connections that we used to have are disintegrating because now we're just kind of sitting with our chatbot and just vibing out of our minds to get results that are in our own image. Is that basically one of the things that you're feeling in there, or is it
Yes,
different?
I mean, first of all, I have to say one thing.
Okay.
Like, don't kick me off the show, but I'm actually the funny thing is, so the whole design system part, I was actually never part of it. The only reason why I lately sort of entered in your little world, or your design system world, is because I was always working and being like, I don't go into that whole design system stuff so deep because, it's all systems. I don't have time to design. I'm just going to name tokens, have architecture and all of that. And then suddenly when I started playing more with these AI things, I was like, ooh, this is actually coming into my file. So if I don't do all the design system stuff, then this is not going to work. And this is how I got the ball rolling, and then entering that that whole thing. And then I just thought I'm getting it all wrong. I was assuming I don't have enough design system knowledge. I don't have enough dev knowledge. And then the more I got into it, I'm like, oh, no. And actually, there's just a lot of open things and nobody talks about it. So people just show me the flashy little thing, like, oh, look, this works and this reads a spec. And I'm like, yeah, but what about all the rest? Like, how does the whole thing work? And so this is, I think where I got really frustrated at this whole process. And also what you say, it's a bit like with the vibing, I think it's very important that we just say, oh, let's design with AI. And then we put everything in one pot. And it's like whether I vibe code, which is fine for some people. If you're just a solo designer, just vibing a product, like go ahead. But then we're using the same thing suddenly in enterprise. And then we have all these people in the middle that are completely lost. So this is what I see. And I think there's a place for vibing and there is a place for a solid pipeline and maybe adding AI that can help us. But you first need to know what you're doing with it. And suddenly we're just throwing it on there. And that's what makes me really nervous.
Okay. Well, first off, I think you are. I do see you as a design systems person, even if you feel like you don't are a design systems person.
That as a compliment. So it's a hard one to earn.
Yeah, I do, because here's the thing. I mean, as a person who's teaching the right way or the best practices out there and trying to align to standards, right? That's the system. It's not necessarily maybe as as in depth as writing a whole stupid book about one, but. And that I'm just referencing me, of course, but or there's other design system people who have written books, but I'm just saying, like, if you are an advocate of systems, which I feel that you are, then you're a design systems person. That's effectively what I guess I'm trying to align it with. So you're not kicked off the show. You still have another.
I'm so glad I can stay.
Yeah, you can stay. You're one of us. So yeah, I think let's I guess go down the paragraph here, because the first thing that's on the paragraph here is that you want to talk about design to code with AI and why it's a mess. So why do you feel it's a mess?
So yes, what I'd like to do is because I'm obviously coming from the Figma side, right?
Yeah.
And I think so it's also great. So please feel free to also interfere and like bringing that more systematic and code side to it. So I look at my first, let's say it's like sort of a path. And then I want to start here with Figma, and then I want to end up here. So in a perfect world, what was sort of promised or what we expect is that I design something in Figma, and then we're having AI coming in out of file. And then this gets translated. There is some sort of hub, we imagine, probably. And then we have an output at the other end. So whether that's mobile or desktop or whatever, like wherever we have it. It's a bit like what I think tokens is what we all imagine what we want, right? So token is like set it up here. There's a few hurdles, but more or less you're getting that's running quite smoothly. But then we're coming to components. And it just doesn't work. And so from my side, and I see a lot of stuff happening on the code side, and I think there is going to be solutions. I told you I listened to the show you had with Kalec, and I thought that was amazing. That was really great in the article and everything for me. And I think you could see really well. So this was about, for those who haven't listened to it, you should. And this was about building agents. And he made it really clear that he could build something really well, but he needed all the context and all that deep tech knowledge. And so I think on that side of the pipeline, stuff is happening, and people also have the tech skills to ask for things, to build things, to get this implemented. And then on the design side of the thing, I feel it's completely neglected. And the only thing I hear is people going, oh, just don't use Figma. And I'm like, yeah, but wait. That's not how you're going to, okay, if you have a code base, you can start iterating from it. But what if you don't have anything? Because then you're just iterating on generic stuff. So you need a designer, and the designer needs a canvas and a mess to work and to distill that mess down into a system. That's the creative part. Otherwise, everything just looks like Tailwind and lovable again. And I'm like, but this part, like how do I get from Figma to code? It just simply doesn't work with a component. And it's not like then people go, oh, Figma is bad. It's like, no, it was made for a human developer to look into that file to translate, let's take a component, to translate a component into code and to take into account all the knowledge that that developer had. And then you could even take apart front end and back end, it's huge. So people go, just put all the power into Figma, which I think structurally doesn't even work. But even if you could, it only takes CSS, right? Which is a small part of the code you need. It's huge CSS. Like it's a whole science. Like it's massive. So the knowledge a designer would need to steer that. Designers are already overwhelmed with auto layout, which is more or less Flexbox and CSS grid, and a tiny subset of it, and component properties. And then you're expecting them to know it doesn't work. So I think there is a huge gap. And this is a problem. There's a moment where I'm also struggling with myself because I always it's like, when you're admiring the problem the whole time and you're like, but what can we do? But first of all, I'd like people to spell this out and to not show me little cool snippets on LinkedIn, how they go in and with the NPC and look, it's like, I can do that and that works. NPC is generally great if you use Claude and NPC to generate a website, it works well. But what do you do if you scale it, if you build it, if you need assistance? There's the whole foundation we have suddenly is not working anymore. Mm-hmm. And this is the part where I'm like we're just taping over it the whole time. So either we're honest about taping or we find out new tools or have a sub tool of Figma. I don't know what the solution will be.
Yeah. Okay. I definitely understand what you're coming from there, because I think the parts that I'm resonating with certainly is that the snippets thing for sure. I'm seeing that a lot in social media. In fact, I'm seeing it a lot also in organizations where you get these prototypes that are just like, oh, look at this thing that I did.
Yeah.
And let's do that. And let's just put that in prod real quick and see if it works. And let's test that. And even though it's not really testing not properly, so like it's the snippets and the systems that are underlying it, underneath it, whether it's a translation of design to code or just the planning. I think fundamentally, maybe not necessarily saying the systems, but the planning is the thing that I'm not seeing a lot of anymore. Right. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of like shoot from the hip, like, oh, okay, let's do that now. Let's try that. Let's see what I did over here. Boom. Right. Even in Kalig's example, he had a lot of planning. Like that post is an hour-long read, and you could see how much effort went into trying to get the right output. And in order to get the right output, you needed to plan and iterate to get the output. I'm not seeing a lot of that exercise happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that I'm resonating with mostly in the feedback, the feelings that we're getting with the mess that we're talking about here, right? Now, something that's interesting about it, because the Figma focus that you have and the translation from the expectation of a designer in Figma to the result in a product, I've traditionally also been in the camp of Figma is just a representation of what the user actually sees, right? The source of truth ends up being in code. And after talking with Kevin Muldoon on this show a few weeks ago, he was telling me about a third source of truth. And I think you said that you didn't watch that particular, because you said a couple of episodes that you did see. But just to refresh the folks who maybe have seen it, and to let you also get what his idea was. You have a source of truth, which is the design file. You have a source of truth that is the code, right? And that's always traditionally been the battle that we've seen in the industry. The third source of truth that he's talking about and suggesting is that there is a diff, so to speak. It's basically when you put both of those two things together and you see what the difference between those two things are. He's advocating for that truth. That's basically saying, here's the difference between these two things, where this is what it ought to be. And that ought that he's explaining in there is a truth, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I was like kind of, I don't know if the words blowed away, but like inspired a little bit by that, because I think it's true that the designers have an intention that they're trying to convey, right? but it's uncomfortable to do that strictly in code, right?
Yeah,
You need
that's
that,
not going to work.
exactly. You
I
need
need a
that creative.
canvas. I need that creative feel to
Right,
work on.
exactly. So what is a process look like in your mind, or your perfect process that includes this AI that figures out that diff, that closes that gap for you, so to allow a designer to continue working on the canvas and express themselves, but also close the gap and get the right output on the code side, on the product side? What does that look for you?
I mean, there's two things. I'm going to tell you what in a magic world what I'd have, and I tell you one solution that I think is very similar to what you say that I'm keen on, and I think it might solve it. So in a perfect world, I'd like to have my canvas, because I'm very defending the canvas. I think it's very important for the creative process. And then I'd like, in the moment, actually I experimented with that in Claude, and I said I'm building like a little tool that does what I would want it to do, which is really funny. And I showed it people, and they go like, "Oh, you're building a new Figma." I was like, "No, I'm just trying to, what you say, like get my thinking straight, because I have to find new ideas." Like before I was working in Photoshop, when we had to do this in Photoshop, and I remember that someone came and showed me responsive design.
Oh God.
And I was like, wow.
Yes.
And then I was like, we were a little team, and then we went there and we said, could we do this? Could we do this for, and this was a big brand I was working for. And they were like, no, nobody would pay you. That is weird stuff. Nobody would pay you to make 3 different designs in Photoshop. That would take way too long. And I think we're in the same situation, because then I had Figma, or Sketch actually first. And it was like, oh, there's a component, and there's these styles, then it wasn't even variables. And suddenly this was really fast. And then we could argue that we're becoming part of this. And people did see that made sense actually. And I think we're in the same thing. So I would like, so I play around with it. And what I'd like is to say this is a component, and then have like sort of a magic thing in the back that understands I'm building with React, but I can still be a designer. I move it around, and it creates the component property, creates the slot. It sort of understands like a developer would look at this. It creates, which is my thing, good CSS. It knows there should be a container query, or there should be, it creates this dumb CSS when you read a Figma file, because it wasn't made to create good CSS. So that would be my perfect scenario. Okay. But what I think, what is actually working is the thing that you also touch on. Like in my mind, and in many minds, it's like this ping pong, Figma code, Figma code, Figma code. It's not working.
Right.
And so it's this going Figma, sort of a satellite code. And I really like, I don't know if you've seen that, Nathan Curtis did a lot of this, and TJ Petrie also published some stuff. I wrote an article actually translating that for designers last week, which is on Substack for free. And they call it, so it's a component contract. Okay. So they have a JSON file or YAML file. And then in that, let's say JSON file, they have both. So it goes into code and it goes into Figma. So it tells it, this in Figma, you are like this. And in code, you're like this. And I think this is sort of the idea, because we always boil back to, I think it's in the end, is the idea of what we have with the token, that we have a JSON file that holds it outside of that whole system. And that seems to me the only thing that's actually feasible, because you need that mapping. That's the problem. The drift is the thing that everybody runs into. And the enterprise level, they have a team that can look after that drift. And everybody in the middle, they're fighting, and they don't even have the right tools. And they're supposed to do the naming, the structure. Design system is so much work. Just teaching it, putting it on. I'm like, oh my God, this is like so much stuff. So I always told small teams before, don't sweat it. Yeah. Like, just get it sort of right. There's going to be a developer, and they're going to know. And, if you have a little mistake here or there, but I can't tell it anymore, because that's not true if AI is reading it. It's just going to invent stuff you're not going to notice. And so that idea of that contract in a JSON file, or sort of a deterministic thing. Like, don't get me started on the MD files now.
No, let's get started on the MD files, because I hate those fucking things. Oh my God.
You tell me about it. I do have a love-hate relationship with MD files.
Okay. Okay.
You tell me tell me your feelings towards.
God. I feel like
your feelings towards MD files.
Yeah. Here's the thing. MD files in general, and I think maybe this might be the same love-hate relationship, because MD files before AI was great for like writing my blog and all of that other stuff. It's very simple to go ahead and format and write and stuff like that. I just think that we've put too much emphasis on an MD file to effectively program AIs and agents. I
Yeah.
think we put too much weight on that stuff, and the one that really grinds my gears is Design MD, right? The marketing behind Design MD was astronomical in comparison to what it actually offers, which is, hey, here's some design tokens and here's some do and don'ts. Like, we've been doing that in design systems as a documentation site for years. Now all of a sudden we're going to go ahead and promote it because Google decided that it's going to be a specification now. I'm just like, I was beside myself when I saw that stuff. Anyway, I'm going to get off that soapbox for a second.
You
But
go ahead. You go.
but
Let it all out. Let it all out.
thank you, I appreciate that. This is design therapy. That's what we were kind of marketing this as. So
Yeah, yeah.
we'll make it work. So I like both of those things, right? The first thing that you were saying about this translation thing, and when you were talking about that, it reminded me of Framer. Have you used Framer?
Yeah, not so much because that sort of the stuff I would use Framer for, I like to write just HTML, CSS. I'm like, yay, I can make a little page. So, but I did hear great things about Framer, I have to say.
Yeah. Because I was introduced to Framer. They actually came when I was working at Compass. They came to Compass to like show off their new tool. Well, we were still in Sketch. It was like, hey, what about this thing? And I was immediately like, this is the future. And specifically because it gave you the canvas that Sketch had
Mm-hmm.
and technically Figma now has, but all the stuff that was in the back was all code. So if
Yeah.
you wanted to put a button somewhere and make a card and all of the stuff, it would actually be code behind the scenes so that when your designer would be in the canvas and working and exploring and doing all the stuff that designers would traditionally do, at the end of it, you could hypothetically have, I'm going to put in quotes, production code, right? Whether or not that's quality or not, especially back when it was being like, presented, is questionable, certainly, but at least the vision of what it could be, I really resonated with. And that's why, like, when you're talking about as a designer and you want to do explorations and turn this potentially into something that could potentially be in a product or at least a prototype that is viable, that translation of, okay, I want my coded components on the canvas, that seemed like the better solution. And it is interesting to me that Figma actually beat it out, being closer to Sketch in functionality initially, except for having the multiplayer, which admittedly, I actually don't see a lot of people using multiplayer. I see a lot of people sharing files and like
Yeah.
commenting on files, but I don't see
Oh,
like,
yeah, totally. Not, but not at the same time. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't.
yeah. Like I see like that's the Envision thing, right? In Envision,
Mhm.
you wanted to go ahead and put your file up so people could comment on it. That's what I see a lot of people using like the multiplayer for in Figma.
Yeah.
And then the plugin ecosystem. The plugin ecosystem at Figma, I think, is the thing that really puts Sketch underneath the water overall, because now you could just extend it however you wanted. So I think it's really those two things that really put it up on top, as opposed to Framer, which is like, designer trying to code, like, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable. What is this? I've never seen it before. Where Figma, I think, was a natural progression, even though it's still kind of keeping us stuck on the canvas. So like, I guess I want to know what you think about, because I see the canvas, I guess, preference that you're having in here for sure, right? As a designer in the exploration, but is there a world, or is there something in you that says, do I really need the canvas anymore if I can like speak the thing that I want and it just
Yeah.
shows up on the page, right? Like, is that something that would be okay for you as well, or
No.
no? Okay.
No, but that's I haven't, because that is that is what I'm having the biggest issue. So I mean, I do like I do small things with these vibe coding tools like Lovable, and when I say vibe coding, I think also it's a bit different to whether you're developer or designer. For me, it's vibe coding is like when I use the term, it's like Lovable and Replit and these sort of things, or even Figma Make, and then I say pair designing when I use Figma, Claude, and MCP, and then agentic design systems when I use agents. That is not any sort of official term. It's just how I ended up naming it, like in my classes and stuff. And so I do small little products and stuff, or I actually do a lot of helpers for my own office and things with vibe coding. But it's when I don't care about the design. Because as soon as I care about the design, and I also think this is the thing that if you don't work in design, if you work deep in code, you don't get it, because that's what developers always tell us. But if you can, I'm like, yeah, I can write it in HTML and CSS. It's slower, but if I would spend more time, I could have also done it probably faster. But the thing is, that's not my issue. My issue is that this drawing on the canvas, it's like it's the closest to a sketchbook. I even do paper sketches still, because this is the moment where you drag things on, you move it. And the thing I strongly believe in, there's a book actually by Richard Sannett, which is one of my favorite books, called The Craftsman. And you should read it. It's really great because it's from 2007. And he talks about craft. And he talks in this book about craft, not like being from woodwork, but he's really obsessed with Linux. So he talks a lot about Linux and the community and doing that, but he also talks about a nurse talking to the patient. And so he always says it's the presence. You need to feel the material pushing back. And the moment you feel the material pushing back and you push, this is, I mean, with wood, you see it best when you're like, before that breaking point, this is when it gets really good. And he has this thing, I strongly agree with that. He said, you need to move your hand in order for your head to process and to create real craft. And I strongly believe that you need to move. I need to physically move stuff with my hands on that canvas. And talking to machines, something that's trained on language. I like an LLM. I use it all the time for everything. For example, I love making plugins with Claude in Figma. That's amazing. Yeah. That's really, really great. But that's tools. When I design, I need to design. And that's why I feel really strongly that there needs to be a canvas or something similar to a canvas. Unless you put a chip in my head and I can imagine the things and they move, which I know there's people that want to do that. I am being ironic here. Don't do that. Then I need a canvas. I think any creative person needs a surface to push and push back and move with the hand.
Okay. So I have two things about that are diametrically opposed. So the first thing that I'll say is that I resonate with what you're saying as an artist. So I told people before that I was an interactive sculptor, and it was something that very important to me that I could be tactile and a person could actually physically touch and move around the object and see it react to the way that it was built and those things. And that was why I got into what I do now digitally with interactive web work. So I resonate with having that artistic canvas and exploring and having your hands in the medium. So I definitely like that. Here's the diametrically opposed issue, though. And this is the thing that I tell people all the time is that I believe that designers should be knowledgeable in the medium that they work in. This goes back to the source of truth conversation, because the truth, traditionally, my stance has been the code, right? Because that's what the user's actually pushing and touching.
Exactly.
Right?
100%. 100%.
So when we're talking about putting your pencil to the paper in the metaphor, technically that pencil to the paper, that medium technically ends up being code, and the design ends up being the representation of it. But again, like the show is called Wireframe. Like, I believe in wireframes. I believe in sketching out like the same way that, I would make a sculpture. I'm not immediately getting the raw material to go ahead and build the thing. You have to have a plan, right? And that's effectively how I see, and we were talking about plans, 10, 20 minutes ago. You have to have the plan that indicates what the expectation, what the ought should be at the end of it, right? And the best way of working, in my opinion, has been knowing your material. So knowing
Hmm.
that this,
Absolutely.
right, the thing that you're eventually going to go ahead and show to the audience, show to your visitors, show the people who are going to see this, but also have the steps in place to um, plan that execution, right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm now wrapping myself back around so that it's no longer diametrically opposed. I just need a little rubber duck on this. I think you're right in terms of how important the canvas is because again it aligns to my thinking of wireframe about here's the plan. This is the plan that I want to go with, and it's just a rough sketch or it's a couple of rectangles, right? I get to move them around, get to play with them, but it's much harder. Well, I shouldn't say harder. Hold on a second. I'm just thinking about adding the agent or the LLM into the loop here now. Because what I said earlier was would it be okay for you to speak with one and then see what comes out? And I guess there's a world where could I mean, people have done this already. Agents are already planning, right? Agents are already
Yeah.
planning for people, but it's not visual. And I think that's the thing that maybe is uncomfortable in this whole thing, right?
I think I think I would also divide two things. Well, first of all, I had to laugh a bit because I had that discussion with a friend, and he was saying, "Don't say that out loud when there's a VP of product around."
Oh,
Because they,
yeah.
like, just if it, I'm like, I'm not planning on killing efficiency and everybody becoming incredibly arty. I am the first person that says every designer should know the have literacy. I would say, and they don't need to code; need to have literacy in AI and in code. It's like an architect. An
Agree.
architect, I expect an architect to draw the plan. I don't expect them to be there like putting the stones on top of each other, but I expect them to plan whether this is made of stone or of glass and wood and to know the restrictions. But now I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh yeah, the two sides. Because what we're sometimes doing is that we're saying, oh, it's either a system and the machine could just generate from the system much faster and we could just talk to it, or it's all creative. And I think if you're thinking of a brand and a good product, then it just combines the two. So I am not against, I saw a great demo of Storybook, for example, where AI generates own components and things that they're doing. I thought that was really fascinating from an existing code base, right? They had like sort of the atoms and could create things. If you're working on something that has like these heavy pages with forms and things and then whatever, things that people use, I think you could do that really well with AI, and you can get there with voice commands because you have a base that you're using. But if you only use that, you're going to get a really dead product. But if you're combining it, so it's more the brand, I think, that is coming back here. So if you're coming from the design part and think of a page, there is a hero usually. There's something that gives you an emotion, that gives you a brand. And the things like Linear and Stripe, they break systems. That's like visually, not the code, but there's visual breaks that makes it feel like the brand. You can look at it and there's a brand. And this is why everything, when you see those posts and it's done in Claude and you see those things and they're done in Tailwind, they're not ugly or bad design. They're just, you just have seen the pattern too many times. It's boring. And so I think we should work hand in hand, and we should give place to the craft and the canvas, and we should also give place to that some stuff can just be generated. I think this can work hand in hand, and I don't think it's one or the other. But I think if we're throwing the craft away, currently we all have code bases that were made in combination of designers and developers, so it's a very easy game right now. But that doesn't feed itself. You need to feed it, and it's hard to argue the why would you spend the time, and if we can be so much faster. And so also what I'm doing now, I'm talking to a few VP of product. So by the way, if you're working in product from the more business side, I'm super happy. I'm setting up some meetings to really see what is their concern. What do they want? What do they want to see? Because I don't think they want to see just generated stuff, but they probably want that balance. I think should be where we're aiming.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Actually, first off, I want to call out how awesome it is for you to reach out to people to find out what they want, or at least what they're expecting, right? What, because that's when you're talking about doing user research, you don't necessarily ask people what they want. You ask more about, their
Yeah.
expectations and you circle around the want, because asking them what they want necessarily isn't exactly what they actually want. But it's really great for you to reach out. So if anyone else out there is listening, watching, as a product owner, definitely reach out to Christine for some feedback there, because
Yeah,
I'd love to
I'd
hear.
love to create also these tutorials and these materials that bring us there, because I think it's what I said. I think there's a lot of people also don't speak up because they're like, oh, if I say that our AI workflow, I don't have a clue what it is. So there's a weird shame attached to it. I find that people just don't say, I don't know. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people that actually don't, they're like, what does an agent look like?
Right.
Like sort of I think it's a lot of people are like, oh no, I need to know that otherwise I made also a lot of fear around this. And I love Joey Banks, that I talked to him about that at Config. He put this post, he said, I didn't know what a skill was, I just learned what a skill was 2 weeks ago. And I was like, thank you so much, Joey, because it was really great, because I also just learned it a few weeks ago, how that works, how you set that up. And I also think that it's very important to be a bit open, that not everybody knows everything suddenly.
Yeah, no, really well said there. Because in fact, it reminds me of the chat I had with Kalig, and I was like, "Look, what the hell's an agent, right? Like, it's just what's an agent?" And I complain about this, and this is the first time I complained about it. But he basically was like, "Oh, you could ask Claude." I'm like, that's not what I want, though. Like, I want a human to tell me. I brought you on the show to tell me, because I look at you as a person, as talking to Kalig, who's obviously been working with these agents and has this whole post and was, very in the trenches. And I'm like, make it make sense to me, right? And admittedly, it from what I got out of it, it sounded like agents are just a whole bunch of MD files, which still doesn't sound right to me, because there's, skills are also a whole bunch of MD files. And I was just like, well, what's the difference between the agents? It's just like, that's why I hate the MD files effectively, is because we're all just chalking it's all MD files the whole way down. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, but the agent, just to jump in, I mean, what the agent does, it's just you have a file in Claude or Cursor, wherever you work, and it's called agent. And then you literally just create sub agents. So give it a task, and it's really simple. It just says the agent name, and then it says I think it's description. And you just tell it you do this, and because it's based on an LLM, it just knows when you tell it you are the design system, blah blah blah, you do this and this. It just knows that from having read too much about it.
To like, just for something to just know, right? Like
no, well, I mean, it's. And then you give it tools. A big difference is between a normal MD file and agents. You give it tools, and you say, for example, you can use the console MCP and look at my Figma file, or you go to my Google Drive, or you could do it. I mean, developers, obviously, there's some code things and like that they connect. That stuff I don't do. But so for my design stuff, I give it tools, or you can connect different things. You can connect your Notion, and you say you look at my Notion, and then you compare it to something in my Figma file and things like that. And then you just let it run. But the funny thing is, we're so obsessed with agents. And I was like, I want to build agents. I have a really simple setup. I actually just use to help me update my books. I use that in CoWork. So that's really useful. That's how I got into it. And it's just CoWork. And every time I'm like, can we go into Claude Code? It's like, no, we don't need to. We can do it all here. And so I'm always like, I want to go more in Claude Code. And my stuff I need, I don't need it. And the funny thing is, so the Kalig's article, we should invite Kalig actually to this. So I took Kalig's article. I was like, great, finally, I'm going to do this design system agentic setup. And I copied it. I put it into Claude. And I said, I read this. I love this. I want to build this. And I wanted to do for one of my courses, I wanted to do a card and a button in Figma, super simple, MCP, connect, create a tiny. I always want to do the tiniest version of everything to understand it properly. Tiniest version of a code base, and then storybook, which I think, by the way, is great storybook for designers to work with. And so I did that, and I was spinning it all up, and then that's great. And it was like, great, can we build the agents now? And Claude just went, you don't need agents. And it was like, I want to have agents. And that was a really big learning for me. And this is also why I think if you have a well-written article like this, in depth, that explains why and here and that, and you give that to Claude. It's a big difference than just being like, let's just build an agent. And the great thing was I really learned so much doing that, because the thing is, I was like, anyone working on a tiny design system level that I personally would use, a small company, just trying to doing the minimum, you don't need agents. You have MCP, you have Claude, and you have MCP, which is also funny because people always think MCP. I also was like, oh, MCP, it's just a great. I mean, it's literally like if you say a cable, I'm going to do they asked me to do a course about MCP, and we named it MCP Claude and Figma. But it's literally, I'm saying USB cable, a course about how to connect a USB cable. And it's a very powerful USB cable, but it's literally just a protocol. It doesn't do anything. Right. The whole power lies in Claude, and it lies in your knowledge. And what I learned from setting up that mini workflow was that I need to know what I'm doing. I can only set up an agent, or I only need an agent if there's a loop I keep repeating. I keep comparing this to this. Then I need an agent I can take that work off. If I don't even have a pipeline, there's a difference between an agent and a pipeline. A pipeline is step A, B, C, and this is the important thing. I think it is also what you touched on in the beginning. This is the human, the knowledge we need to bring. And when you have the knowledge, then you can start automating it. But don't automate stuff you have absolutely no clue, because you need to check it. And I had an agent that made components in Figma. It was awful.
Well, that's taking me over to the co-work thing, because I don't use co-work because
so good.
I'm deathly afraid of it just taking over. I'm definitely.
Oh no, but you just give it access to one file.
But even
give
that,
it access to.
Even that, I'm just like, what are you going to do with that? Like, are you going to delete the whole thing? Like, I don't even know, right? Like, there's just
I just have an isolated file on my Dropbox, and then I connect co-work to that file, and in that file there is a Claude MD file. No. Claude MD, obviously, and there's a Claude MD, and then there I have my agent. So the agents I use for correcting my book, for example, they're not the agents that I just talked about that are the file and the sub agents, and they're literally just a Claude MD saying, you are 4 people. It's like a schizophrenic Claude MD that it's literally the model just shifts between personalities. It just pretends to be that person, that person, that person. Mm-hmm. And it works really well. They pull in context files, and it works really well if you're writing. And for example, I write a book, and then it pulls in research, but the tools I talk about, if they're still updated, if I miss the tool that's new, if reader feedback, when I write a page, I ask it, do you think it's good? And then it constantly tells me, no, readers really like when you tell them more about how you failed. So just failing more. So I use it as a feedback. I have these feedback agents. That's the only place where I find them hugely useful in my workflow right now. Mm-hmm. In my design work, I don't need I need MCP and Claude right now, nothing else.
Just the connection, just the USB effectively.
The connection, yeah. I need Claude, and then I talk to Claude about my file. I clean up, I do all the grunt work. I clean up my file. I can do token pipelines now, which I couldn't do before, because that simply, as a designer, sounds so easy when you're on design systems. Before designer, this is like big stuff, connecting Storybook, code base, GitHub, like all of that stuff. It's really foreign to us. So that is really great. I can do these small setups properly and ask questions about it. And so that I use it a lot, and I find it hugely, really an advantage in but elevating my work. If I don't know what I'm doing, I notice that when I'm setting up this mini code base, as soon as I don't know what I'm doing, it's just random stuff that doesn't help me.
Yeah. So the title of this episode is Humans Over Hype. I want to go back to the humans here, because the humans are important here. In some place these humans are important. Where are they important, do you think, Christine?
To supervise to have the expertise. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I find scary is actually, so I showed my kids, they love using cursor and things like that. So I showed them on rainy days, and then my son, he was at the time 8, and he was building this little thing with cursor. Kids are way better than adults to teach, by the way, because they're not scared of code. They just look at it, they highlight it, and they say, what's this? Explain it. Why isn't this working? It's really funny how they talk to it. And it was great because he got the concept of it. But then suddenly he was saying, hey, Mom, do you know that there was a time people actually, they wrote this like by hand.
No, oh no, God, please. Oh no, my
Oh,
heart,
how
oh,
is it?
my heart.
It was just the most natural reaction of an 8-year-old. And I was just standing there being like, I just can't, like, I was like, that it's just what's going to happen. Why would they sit down? And I find that I'm not saying that of obviously, I'm saying that of this is really scary because I think you need all the hours I spend trying to understand CSS. It's like it was painful, but you learned again, we're at this friction, right? That I talked about before. It was the friction that made me learn how that works. And this generation, they're not going to learn this. So I'm a bit like, so who is going to supervise all of this? Who is going to go? I mean, maybe some people would still say, oh, I still want to learn it. But I'm like, who's going to go through all the friction of learning to code well? Design well, probably more likely, but to code well, and then who's going to supervise all of that? I mean, Claude says that nobody's going to code and it's all loops and stuff. I'm a bit like, I don't know. I like the idea of a human. I like the idea of something sort of being this little assembly line and there being a human being. No, yes, yes. I like that idea. I always see AI as my intern.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also how I see the MD files. I hand my intern a book and I'm like, read this. This is what we're doing. I don't expect my intern to remember everything and get this right. But I expect my intern to prepare an email for me or to remember the basics. And then I expect me to be there and correct with the knowledge that I collected over the years.
Yeah. There's a thought that's been going around the industry about, does it even matter how the quality of the code actually is at the end of the day? Right? If you get the expected output, right?
Yeah.
And this is a conversation that I actually had with Matthew Strum on many episodes ago. It was actually a Tailwind episode, but one of the finer points of that episode is that, like, he asked me, he says, do you know the assembly code that's running on your computer right now? Of course not. I don't know what the hell that's doing, right? But you trust that it's operating as expected, right? So do you really need to know about every little detail about everything as long as it's, operating as expected? The answer is probably not, right? And I think it's an interesting argument because, like, I spoke about this actually on, I think I was a post on LinkedIn talking about expertise, where are the experts? Right? It's like, the people who are vibing out of their minds are learning all the stuff, or maybe just observing all of the stuff that we learned and the struggles that we had in CSS and all that stuff in an afternoon. That have they even learned anything? Right? In fact, today I was in a code base creating a test like harness, so tests could run on the code. And when Claude made the structure, it wrote all of the test cases inside of the test, and I'm like, no, make a fixture file that has all the like cases that we want to test against, so that there's different cases that are clear in there. And it's just like, I only know that from the experience of writing fixtures, right? Versus, you're going to get the same output, you're going to get the tests that pass. But organizationally speaking, for scalability purposes, it's better to have a fixture folder so that you can go ahead and organize the tests separately from the fixtures. So you put a new fixture in there and it knows, like, you could run tests against it and all be the same. So it's I don't know what the answer to that ends up being ultimately, because you're right about, like, younger generations, who's going to teach them? Is the answer just some of these individuals are going to want to learn? Like, I'm seeing a little bit of this in teaching as well, where some of the students, especially creative ones, are very adverse to AI.
Anti-AI, very.
Yeah. So, there's I think a world where there are individuals that stay experts that may be the people who take those experts' places, as opposed to the individuals that are just using AI for AI's sake. It's just too early to tell, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, I think, again, there's we always, like, when we say code and AI, like, I think there's two things. One thing, I think I'm just personally upset about, which is CSS, because that is true. Probably we're going to end up just having very mediocre CSS, and we're going to survive that. But I just think it's very sad because I think CSS, like an artifact, I think it's just amazing. I think it's going to be a bit like whether you shop at IKEA or whether you go, you buy custom furniture. It's a bit like that. The different things. I think there's going to be people that do CSS, and if someone is into CSS and they show you old project, they're so proud of it. So I think it's going to stay there. But I unfortunately, and this is really like breaks my heart because I think it's CSS is so amazing. Even I'm not the best person at CSS, but just looking at a good CSS file just makes me happy. And the other thing, though, I find very critical where this argument doesn't hold is especially the lovables and things like that. So Lovable had that. They say, oh, they have, and I was always saying, oh, Lovable's great. They have security checks, fantastic. Especially the thing that you just told. You looked at this and you're like, I've done this 1,000 times. This is wrong. I would not have seen that because the stuff you just talked about, I've never done it. Same with Lovable. So you're like, oh, there's Superbase and it wires that up. That looks all fine. I'm like, yeah, I can use Superbase. That's a really good product. It's a good database. All safe, fantastic. They had a breach. They had a problem. Actually, I put it down here. It was a critical row level security finding. I don't even know what that means. But it was pretty bad. There was a security issue and people complained about it. And so usually your stuff could be hacked and the data wasn't safe. And so what they did, they just said, oh, we fixed it. But by the way, we're just providing the tooling. You are responsible for the security. So we're telling everyone everybody can build products now. Everybody is a developer now. This is amazing. You don't need skills to do it. But by the way, if you fuck it, sorry, the language, and you just funnel people's data, this is people's data. Like, this is not funny. You just funnel that through their credit card, whatever gets stolen. You might have a lawsuit. I don't know how that is legally, and about the companies aren't responsible, which also I'm a bit like, I think that the product can't be responsible for that, but the marketing is wrong. The marketing is wrong. We're telling people you can build anything. And I'm like, no, you can't. There's security issues. You cannot funnel people's credit cards through open stuff. It's actually dangerous.
Well, I mean, you could.
For you and for other. Yeah, you could. People do it all the time. But it's like, so I think it's probably I think we might learn by just having these experiences and having people having lawsuits about that stuff, about like building products that really just don't hold up. Well, and that's going to be like people being like, that either we solve that with AI, I don't know. But I think there is a difference between, we're losing CSS. It's just dramatic. But we're like, there's serious issues with just generating code. If you're not a developer and you can't supervise the code that's generated.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% align with those things. Like, it's sure CSS is one thing, and sure, you're just going to go ahead and have a boring site or a site that's not responsive or whatever that ends up being.
So sad.
Yeah, but the more critical things of like security and even
accessibility,
all that stuff that has legal ramifications associated with it, but. Again, I think it still goes back to those are all things that us experts learned over the years that we've done this, right?
So who's going to do that?
Exactly. So this is the thing is that it only until that happens to you do you learn, unfortunately, right? And it's unfortunate that that person could have hired or even just consulted with an expert to say, hey, is this, like, it's the human part that we're looking for, right? Hey, human that is an expert in this thing, please look at this thing and make sure that it's up to your standards. Because I don't know what your standards are, but I'm expecting your expertise to be appropriate here, right? Because you can't say that to Claude. Claude doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. Right? Because Claude's supposed to be an expert in everything and therefore an expert in nothing, right? You have to be specific with Claude or whatever LLM you're using. So as an expert, I mean, I guess maybe this goes back to the agents thing, but like, it's the learning part that now you have this intern that you're working with and as long as you treat it as an intern and realize that it's not going to catch everything, you need an expert, then you'll be in a better position.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that works. Yeah, that works for me in the workflow.
Yeah.
And especially security, I think that is going to be a really interesting topic as well for teaching. That I think this is something I never thought of teaching, and now I'm going to be meeting with someone who talks about security, and I was like, you need to teach me the basics of cybersecurity, because I can't tell people to. I'm telling people currently how to build products by themselves, and I'm not covering this. And this is also, I don't want that marketing of, oh, let me show you anything you want. And I'm like, oh, by the way, there is like just the basics. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a security expert, but I think it's also responsible is the person that builds. But there's people building that don't even know they don't know what Superbase is. They don't know they're using Superbase when they build a product. So I think just adding that education on top of it, I think would be a nice thing.
Yeah, the awareness is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the awareness is huge. And in fact, I mean, I'm scared enough of security that I don't even use Superbase. I stay the hell away from databases. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Or if I do it, I always tell people, if you want a Stripe checkout, build your stuff in Lovable, but then just make a button that is a link to a Stripe checkout. You don't need to have a form where people put in their data. If you've never, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that stuff. I use my platform still. It's a bit awful, but I still use Kajabi in the background. And people go like, why don't you just, I'm like, because there is a team that I had people sign in. So I want a company that I vouches for looking at that stuff. And I'm not going to vibe code stuff in certain areas, even though it might look prettier.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because like you don't need
There's
everything.
no code. We forget about no code, by the way. There's no code solutions. There's developers that build no code solution like Framework. There is people that look at that, security, accessibility, all of that. So I always like, don't forget about those tools if you need a quick product.
Yeah, like it actually reminds me of the book, right? So like when I published the book, sure, could I have had a cart and checkout and all of this stuff on my personal page? I could have, but it's so much easier for me to just go ahead and link out to the publisher and be like, hey, go buy it over there.
Yeah.
Right. Just go over there, buy it, and they're going to have all the security stuff. And in fact, if there's something goes wrong, like it's not on me. Right. It's for them to go ahead and solve themselves. That's why I've went with them to publish the book, because they're supposed to have that all set up. Right. I'm not trying to, do too many things. I've already done too many things. I don't need to be dealing with trying to figure out how to do an e-commerce checkout. God damn. Oh my God. So we're getting close to the time over here. So I wanted to, Christine, give you the opportunity to plug anything that you would like to plug for the viewers at home. What's going on?
So yeah, I'd love to plug two things. One is obviously come and buy all Mac products, obviously. Follow in LinkedIn, and this is where I do most. I have a newsletter where I share stuff. And then if you obviously want tutorials, visit moonlearning.io, so you can have individual tutorials as video tutorials, or I run workshops where I'm also personally, if you want to more chat with me and show me stuff, and I also do in-house upskilling and things like that. And the other thing is what we already touched on. I would really much like to extend to getting to know people in that field, that the product owners that we talked about, like what are this is new way of working, what are you confused about? Well, I just want to have a chat. And the other thing is what I also said, like the security parts, burning tokens, how we're going to deal with that sort of stuff. So all these like little pain points where people are worried. If you have that and you want to reach out, I'm very interested in developing that content in sort of a wholesome way, because it's all a bit confusing. Before I was like, this is a component, there you go, but that is a bit over. So
oh, it sure is. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have changed in just the past year or two. Goodness gracious, it's hard to keep up with. But thank you so much, Christine, for being on the show.
Thank you, Donnie.
Yeah, this is wonderful, and absolutely take a look at Christine's resources. I've been looking at them as well. She's really helpful when it comes to trying to break these concepts down, especially for designers that are non-technical, to really close the gap. So thank you for your resources there, Christine. And thank you for watching. But before you go, please help out the show by smashing that like and subscribe button, just to get notified the next time we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on the official Design Systems Discord, and that's by going to discord.ds.house. There it is on the bottom. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.